The night was a cruelonia moonless, silent, and heavy with the kind of cold that bites straight through bone. The cowboy's horse stumbled through the dark, its hooves sinking into sand that had lost its warmth hours ago. The man held something close against his chest, a bundle no larger than his saddlebag, wrapped in an old brown coat. From within that bundle came soft, desperate cries that broke the silence like tiny glass shards. The cowboy, gaunt and hollow-eyed, whispered, "Hold on, little only a broken bar, we're almost there." His voice cracked from exhaustion. He had been riding for 3 nights straight, searching for milk, for life, for anything that could silence that cry. Hours earlier, he had found a baby swaddled near the ruins of a burned wagon, its mother gone, likely claimed by the same ruthless wilderness that spared no soul. The cowboy hadn't planned on being a savior. He'd buried his own heart years ago with a wife lost to fever and a son buried under the same sky. Yet, when the baby's tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb, something inside him broke, and something else, something forgotten, began to breathe again. Now, as he rode deeper into the Apache lands, the weight of his decision pressed on him. The wind carried strange voice acid drums, whispers, the echoes of a world he didn't belong to. But the baby's cries grew weaker, and the tremor in its small body told him time was running out. He could no longer think of boundaries or danger. Milk, that was all that mattered now. Somewhere out there, a mother still had milk, and that was where he needed to be. By dawn, the horizon turned the color of ash and blood. The cowboy's horse collapsed near a stream. Too worried to stand, he dismounted slowly, his legs trembling. Kneeling, he poured water over his hat and pressed it gently to the baby's lips. The infant stirred but did not drink. The cowboy clenched his jaw, feeling helpless for the first time since his wife's dying breath. He looked up at the red cliffs rising beyond the mist to Apache country. He knew what it meant to trespass here. Yet he also knew death would find them both if he turned back. He wrapped the baby tighter and began to walk. Each step was heavier than the last, his boots dragging through dust and thorn. In the distance, smoke curled lazily from a cluster of hides and wooden poles at an Apache camp. He hesitated, fear gnawing at him. The last time he'd seen Apaches, it had intended well for any cowboy, but that was a lifetime ago. Now there was no pride, no pasta, only the faint heartbeat of the child pressed against his chest. When he reached the edge of the camp, the silence hit him first. Eyes appeared from behind fires in tents astern, watchful and ready. Men rose with bows in hand, women pulled their children close. The cowboy raised his free hand, trembling, the other still holding the bundle close. "Please," he rasped, his voice barely more than a breath. "The baby broken bar needs milk." No one moved. The flames crackled between them, painting his face in red and shadow. He could see their confusion, their suspicion of what man rode into Apache land begging for milk with a child not his own. He swayed on his feet, the world spinning, and nearly fell. Then, from behind the circle of warriors, a woman stepped forward. She was tall, wrapped in a faded blanket of woven patterns, her black hair streaked with gray. Her face carried the sorrow of someone who had seen too many goodbyes. Her name was Okami, though he would not learn it until later. She looked at the cowboy, then at the child, her gaze softening as if something deep within her recognized that fragile cry. Without a word, she moved closer. The man didn't stop her. The cowboy hesitated but finally loosened his grip, allowing her to take the baby. Okami cradled the child gently, her arms sure and steady. She murmured something in Apache, a prayer, maybe, or a promise, and pressed the baby to her breast. The infant quieted instantly, its cries fading into soft, steady breaths. The cowboy watched, his throat tight, his eyes wet. The firelight danced across Okami's face, and for the first time in years, he saw not a stranger, not an Apache, but the mother, one the world had taken from her child, and one the world had just given back. He sank to his knees, overcome by exhaustion and gratitude. Around him, the camp whispered among themselves, but Okami said nothing. She simply looked up at him with eyes that seemed to understand all the sorrow he'd carried, all the miles he'd ridden, all the losses that had led him here. In that silent exchange beneath the desert dawn, something sacred passed between them, a wordless truth that neither the frontier nor time could erase. Two broken souls had found each other through the cry of a child, and in that fragile moment, the cowboy realized he hadn't come searching for milk. He'd come searching for redemption. The Apache camp awoke slowly the next morning, wrapped in the quiet hum of life returning with the sun. Smoke curled lazily from the fires as women stirred pots of cornmeal and men tended to their ponies. The cowboy sat near the edge of the clearing, his hat in his hands, watching as Okomiya, his silent savior, nursed the child he'd brought through the cold. He still didn't know how to thank her. Every time he tried to speak, the words caught in his throat, swallowed by something bigger than gratitude, something close to reverence. The baby, once weak and paled, now nestled peacefully in Okomi's arms, its cheeks warming with color. She rocked it slowly, humming a soft tune in Apache, her voice like a stream running through the heart of the desert around them. The other women began to watch with quiet smiles. Okomi had not sung in years. Since her own child's passing, her voice had been silent, her eyes dry. Yet now, she sang to a stranger's child as though she had birthed it herself. The elders murmured that perhaps the spirits had brought her this baby to heal her heart. The cowboy watched, his hands trembling slightly. He wasn't used to sitting still. His life had been all motion, all escape. But something about that moment demanded stillness. The fire crackled between them, throwing light on Okomi's face. Her skin, sun-worn and strong, glowed in the amber glow. The lines on her face were not of age but of endurance. She caught his gaze once, and though neither spoke, a kind of understanding passed between them, an unspoken peace between two lonely souls from different worlds. After a while, Okomi stood and walked toward him, the baby still nestled against her shoulder. She crouched beside him, offering a bowl of warm corn gruel. "Eat," she said softly in accented English. "You weak, baby needs you strong." Her tone was not commanding, but kinda maternal. The cowboy accepted it with a nod, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you, broken bar. I didn't think anyone would help." Okomi's dark eyes softened. "No one should beg for milk when a child cries," she said, glancing down at the sleeping infant. "Your heart brought you here." He stared at her for a long moment. "You lost someone too," he said gently. It wasn't a question he saw it in the way her hands lingered on the baby, in the faint take behind her smile. Okomi looked down, her lips tightening. "A son," she murmured. "He was small, a broken bar like this one." For a brief second, her voice broke, and then she steadied it, returning her gaze to the cowboy. "I thought my spirit was buried with him, but maybe broken bar it was only sleeping." Her words struck something deep inside him. He nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I lost my wife and boy too," he said quietly. "Been running ever since. Thought if I kept moving, maybe the pain couldn't catch me." Okomi looked at him with deep empathy. "Pain always rides faster than a horse," she said simply. "But sometime as a broken bar you can meet it halfway." They sat there, the fire between them crackling softly. The camp's noises faded into a kind of distant hum, the chatter of children, the neighing of ponies, the rhythmic chopping of wood. In that moment, it felt like time had stopped, the whole world pausing to give space for two broken hearts to breathe again. The baby stirred in Okomi's arms, its tiny fist curling around a strand of her hair. She smiled faintly, brushing the child's cheek with her finger. "He has your spirit," she said. The cowboy chuckled under his breath. "He's got more courage than I ever did," he replied. For the first time in years, his laughter didn't sound hollow. He looked at the baby, then at Okomi. "You saved us both. I don't even know your name." "Okomi," she said softly. "It means a broken bar, my home." The cowboy felt the word settle deep within him, heavy and warm. "Home," he repeated, almost tasting it, as though rediscovering a language he once knew. For a long while, neither spoke again. They simply sat in the warmth of the rising sun, the child between them, two worlds bridged by one fragile, breathing life. By midday, Okomi showed him where to fetch water from the stream and how to mix crushed mesquite pods into a sweet drink for the baby. She moved with grace and purpose, her quiet strength grounding him in a way he hadn't felt since before his world had fallen apart. The cowboy found himself following her lead, eager to learn, to help, to stay useful. When the baby cried again that afternoon, Okomi took it in her arms and began to hum another tune, low, haunting, and beautiful. The cowboy leaned back against the rock, his hat tilted over his eyes, listening. For the first time in a long time, the ache in his chest softened. The cries of the baby no longer meant fear or desperation, they meant life. And as the desert wind carried Nokami's song across the camp, the cowboy realized something that chilled and comforted him all at once. He hadn't come looking for help. He had come searching for a mother, not for the baby, but for the wounded child still buried deep inside himself.